Hello, everybody. Okay, we've all got seats. Hello, welcome to the panel. I'm Sarah. I think you all know me by now. Really nice to see old faces from 2 years ago and a lot of new faces as well. And I'm really looking forward to this panel with some great guests. We have Thorsten Sabel from Germany. Sophie Becher from the United Kingdom. And Molly Hughes from the USA. So some of you might be wondering who is Roscoe, and even if you do know who we are, we've made a short film just to show you some of the work that we've done in the past.
I have a vision. There's something funny going on.
You are encouraged.
I take that as the highest praise.
I had no idea what this was going to become. I know.
No rules.
Thank you. Thanks go to Lauren Proud for that. We're very proud of it. Lauren, thank you. So, this panel is not just about backdrops, it's about backgrounds. And there are many different kinds of backgrounds that we can have. So, given that backgrounds can be many things, from whiteout lighting, green or blue screen, to a printed backdrop, or even a hand-painted scenic drop, or front or rear projection, or LED screens, I'm going to ask you first, how do you decide which background option works best for you, or best for any set, and what are the processes that you go through to get to those decisions? And I'll ask Molly, first of all.
Okay. It's funny, I was thinking about this, and I thought, well, I'm thinking about the directors that I work with who seem to reject green screen.
Yes.
A lot of them. I think of Charlie Kaufman would never use a green screen unless it was filming it as purposely a green screen. Ron Howard does not like green screen, as Wynn probably can attest to, and I think the film that I refer to here is Paint Hustlers with David Yates, who I don't know if people know him. He, outside of the UK, but he directed the last 5 Harry Potter films, or 4 Harry Potter films, and then the Fantastic Beasts films, and I did a film with him. I was an art director on those films, and then when David decided to direct his first film outside of those films, he decided to make it in the US, and I designed it with him. And it was a $50 million Netflix film, and he brought George Richmond, who'd done Fantastic Beasts with him. And people were, I guess this is a long-winded answer to your question, but in my case, it was the director and DP guiding the decision because of budget. And Netflix was nervous about David and being able to do something for $50 million. So he very cavalierly gave away the entire visual effects budget for the film and promised he put a 0 on the line item for visual effects. And now everybody knows that that's quite impossible in this day and age, particularly we were making a slightly period film. We were shooting Georgia for Florida. So I'm sure it didn't end up as 0, but we walked into it, George and he and I walked into it with a plan of no green screen. So I think the answer that, that was a great opportunity because we were all in agreement at the beginning that that's the way we were gonna go, that's the way we went. And so we did photo backings and we did, we'll talk about a little bit later, these sort of low budget painted backings. We used painted backings instead of gray, anything outside that we just threw together, and we had a great scenic who could throw together these painted backings in a day, little ones, for outside the windows. And it was great. It worked really well. I think we'll get into the water part later, maybe, yeah.
Sophie?
I mean, I think it depends on the context, obviously, because if you've got a futuristic world, you're not going to use necessarily a photo backing, or it's going to be a photo backing that's been digitally generated. But then, for instance, if you want to have spaceships moving or something, I'm talking about something like Halo that I did, which was a lot of different planets. It's not necessarily Earth, so you can't take a photo of something and augment it. It's a futuristic world. And we didn't have LED screens at that point. It was sort of quite early on in the LED technology, so we had to make the decision to use blue screen or green screen, much against my sort of desires, really, but also we hadn't settled on the look of some of the planets. So often circumstance dictates. And then, for instance, it's like, how much space have you got on the set? And how the DOP is wanting to light the set, because there's circumstances sometimes when the DOP just says, well, in one circumstance, which I've described to you guys, he said, don't bother with backings, I'm just going to blast light through the window. And it was a disaster. And it just looked like cheap sets all the way through.
Yes.
So there's so many different sort of factors that dictate your decision of what backing to use, I think. No?
Yeah, sure. Thorsten?
It's me, okay. Yes, I think it depends on the situation and what you want to show. Is it just a simple little backdrop because you always talk with the director and with the DOP? Is it just a short look, or do you have to? How long is the camera on the backing, and how big is the window? And so, what you want to tell? Is it just a day, or is it just you just want to see something in that it's not in focus, it's out of focus? But if you really have long scenes in front of a big window, then you should think about how you can do it. So sometimes it's enough just to have a simple printed backdrop from the big picture company that's just around. Or is it something you need a day and you need a night? So, or you have to also tell movement or just changing of lights. So dusk, dawn, I don't know, something, snow, rain. And then, so it depends. Sometimes just a backing, sometimes you need a movable backdrop. So that's because then you choose, you have to choose what will give you the possibility to make the pictures you want. Yeah.
And it's probably multiple, on any one film, you're going to have multiple different types of backgrounds, exactly depending on how many days you're shooting on the set, or, script-driven as well, with movement and all that. And there's presumably never one right answer. There's any number of options that can work. So, which kind of leads me to my next question, which is about when you're working with creative HODs, in other creative heads of department, and a background requires the involvement of many different departments. So I'm wondering how you resolve that decision about what the background is going to be when you have, first of all, many departments involved in that, and also when sometimes, for example, the DP hasn't even started yet, or is not available. And how do you manage that? how do you manage that together, you know, when you're all talking together about different options for the background?
But at this time, the DOP has to come. because if you don't like it, then you don't show it. This is, you have to develop it together in the concept, and then with the director also, and with the DOP, and you have to talk with them. That you can provide what they need and what you need for your design.
Yeah.
So it's always something what you have to do together. Otherwise, you do something, and then somebody is not happy with it, and then they just shoot against the wall.
Yeah.
If they haven't started yet, the DP, it's usually a budget thing,
Yes.
you know, and they're dying to start, I find. So the more you just start engaging, and you know, and they'll engage, you know, as anything. I find the earlier you can engage with your DOP, the better, really, because you can build that trust with each other. And I've been in situations where you're starting to engage with the DOP and they're still working out their deal, so they're really angry at production. So it's a really good bonding experience for both of you. And you can tell them what's going on when they aren't getting enough information. And it's really, I found that to be a good strategy for, you know, building that bond, because that bond is absolutely essential. And even if your personalities clash, just plow through that, kill with kindness, do whatever you need to do, but start engage. They'll engage. You can, the minute you send them something, they'll engage. So I don't, you know, I don't think it's really a problem if they haven't started.
I'm actually finding that often they're starting the DOP when I start, which I find quite amazing. So you're literally going and looking at the locations for the first time almost. I do the initial scout, but they're on the initial scout with the director and stuff like that. But I think you've absolutely got to get the DOP on your side and involve them in your set design right from the beginning, if possible, because, you know, you're at their mercy, really. If they don't like your set properly,
Yes.
you know, however beautiful your set is, it's not going to be seen.
Well,
So,
yeah, that's true, and the same as applies to a background, because you can do a beautiful image, but if it's not lit properly, then... Because
Yeah.
it's always, from our point of view at Roscoe, we always have two main people that we talk to, which is the production designer and the cinematographer, so yes. Moving on from that, because how do you do that when you're both in pre-production and you might have... The Germans have a wonderful word, decision-resistant director who you're working with. And I wonder if I'm sure you've all experienced that, who are push decisions or want to see an awful lot of things and pushed, and everybody knows that a backdrop or a background needs a lot of pre-production time. So I wonder, you know, do you use your relationship with the DP to then try and push that forward in that respect, to get a decision, you know?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if the DOP's got a better relationship with the director than you do, because they've worked together before, then they can be incredibly helpful in supporting you.
Mm-hmm.
Because, as you say, some directors are incredibly nervous about committing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working with one in particular, and he will fixate on something that's nothing to do with what we're talking about, and just keep saying, I hate that stool in the foreground or something, when we're talking about the overall design of the set. Mm-hmm. So you need somebody who's going to help you, support you, and push it forward and say, yeah, I think it's right, we should have an LED backing, or no, we can get away with a photographic backing here, mm-hmm. you know, mm-hmm. and help you in that decision. But also another thing is restrictions on the stage. Sometimes, we were talking earlier, you know, sometimes you've got quite a few sets wedged in a stage, and you've only got a certain distance that you're going to be able to achieve to the backing. Mm-hmm. And in that case, you've got to work out what is the best backing to have out there.
Yes. Yes.
You know, because if it's a very, very short distance, then LED is probably better, you know, because you light it. Or you've had these circumstances with front projection. And
yes, because it was quite difficult to get it really done. But in our project, it was a bit more a financial thing, because these huge LED walls are also quite expensive. So at the end, we end up with a front projection.
Is this on inside?
This is from inside, yes.
Can you show the slide from inside?
Because we had huge windows, and we were limited in budget and space. So at the end, yeah.
So wait, you used LED. Where? I see.
Yeah.
I visited Thorsten on the set of this. It's an amazing.
Yes, it was a front projection. We shot it in New York on a high rise with 6 cameras in an array, and then then we put it on this big on this big front projection wall. Yes.
And they were very noisy, the projectors, weren't they? But
yeah, the projectors were under the set, because
yeah.
we put the set 2 meters high, that we never see the ground, and we put I think we had 12 big projectors underneath to project this big image. Yes.
But that's a case where you have to have the DOP working very closely with you because of the light levels that you're going to have to have.
Yes, and you try to get a bit of the emitting of the light from the picture, but you can't use that much because it's not bouncing so much light. So we put a big sunlight above the screen and try to get enough enough light into this huge set. Yes, but for that you for sure need a DOP. If you decide it by yourself, or if you try to think and then at the end it's not working, then you are really fucked.
Did the DOP have a relationship with the director?
Yes, he had also. Yeah, this Vasilis. It was a guy from Vasilis Katsopis. It's a guy from Athens here.
That's right. Actually, yes.
Yeah, it was a very nice,
nice
relationship with him.
But the sun, the big HMI that they put for the sun had to be insulated with, because it was the heat that it gave out. I remember this. It gave out so much heat that it would have burnt a hole in the screens or something, because it was.
No, it tries to. It starts to get a bit wavy there because it was so hot. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. So. Yeah, these are the technical problems that you can then have to try to avoid. And before it would be better, but then you have to go around with it. But we get it done at the end.
And you'll know next time not to put the sun too close. You'll know next time not to put the sun too close.
Like Icarus. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's always better, as you said, to have some sort of physical background as opposed to blue screen, because we have so little control afterwards with blue screen in the post.
Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting
topic, actually.
Yeah, that's right. Because that's I was going to ask that, like, how does your control over the image as a production designer change depending on whether it's a blue screen? This is one of Sophie's here, which is a blue screen background, or a scenic backdrop, or a photographic backdrop, or LED content, or projection content. Do you find there's a difference in how you as the designer can control the image?
Oh, yeah, totally. Because, I mean, you know, for instance, on Halo, we did the concepts. We 3D designed, you know, the city.
Can you show Halo?
And
Halo?
This is Halo.
Yeah, oh, that is Halo, sorry.
Yeah. And so, for instance, we did the whole city in 3D and passed it on to post-production. But always on these shows, at the end of the show, we're finished, and then they give it to the VFX. So you have to insist as a designer to be part of that sort of post-process.
Yes.
Which is very difficult because they generally don't allow you to be on board for that long. So
it's an issue.
You know, it's an issue. So however much detail one gives, it's still never the same as having the designer there, saying the texture should be this, because they always make presumptions in post.
Is this the show you came in once a week on?
Yes. So I just, yeah, thank you for prompting that. So I just said, right, once a week, I've got to have a call with the VFX people, but that was off my own back because I couldn't bear to see what they were doing. But I mean, you know, for instance, Halo had so much VFX to it. You had to do that, otherwise it would have just looked like a mush. It's a bit like the Emily in Paris, sort of, or the Annie saying about, you know, having half Paris and half Prague.
Yes.
If she'd been allowed to see the film before it was released, she could have said, look, you cannot do this. But so they don't involve us that often in the post.
Do you have that negative experience of VFX running in the other direction in post-production to what you've intended, Thorsten?
No, for now, it was all the time quite good, I think. I don't have this bad experience for now.
It's not bad, it's just that, you know, when you're building worlds, it's so specific. And I'm quite fussy about the textures and how it should look. And, you know, in my head, we've all created these worlds, and you want that world to be there, out there for people to see. Because you know, the whole art department has worked and the whole production has worked so hard to create these sets, and they need to be augmented with the right background.
Yeah, I think this idea that, and we talked about this idea that you'll show up in post, they know you're going to show up in post if asked anyway, which has happened to me a couple times with directors I have relationships with. You know, just, oh, can you have a look at this? We're not happy with what visual effects are doing with this extension or, I mean, this background. Can you have a look at it? And then it is bad, they're right, or whatever it is, so you want to fix it. And then I think we were saying, like, they'll pay to hire, you'll say, can we hire a concept artist to redo it? So yes, you're hiring a concept artist. And then I find myself doing it, and then you're spending all these hours because you have a relationship with the director and you want it to be right, and then you're not getting paid, you know, and some people may think that's crazy, and some people may get paid in post, but I think there are a lot of us who talk about this idea that it's still our design. It's really important. It's still our set, you know, and if it comes out and part of it is not your set, if part of it is Prague when it's supposed to be Paris, you know, that's really like, oh, that's not what it's supposed to look like. This is not, you know, what I designed. So I think that's how we stay married to the process, slightly being taken advantage of, maybe.
Yes, it's interesting because the visual effects supervisor actually starts right at get-go. And it feels like the production designer needs to be extended the other way as well.
Yeah, that's right.
After wrap,
yeah.
That it has to be a two-way street. And at the moment, it very much your last day is the last day of shoot, presumably.
Yeah, and then you build this great relationship with the visual effects supervisor, so they call you in post. Yeah, you know. So it's a dilemma.
So this morning, Imbar was talking about Ways of Seeing, which is from John Berger, and actually when I was reading the program, it reminded me that I studied history of art in the Courtauld Institute a long time ago, and I went back to read that again, having been inspired by the talk from this morning. And there was one thing that I read there, which I'm going to read out here, which is that the meaning of an image is changed according to what one sees immediately beside it or what comes immediately after it. And I wanted to talk to you, Molly, about that because I think that you have a good example of that with Pain Hustlers, with the water that you can, if you establish a certain look, then it's possible to drop a drop into the image and have it believable. So
yeah, maybe you just pull up the first water images.
Yeah.
This one, here they are. Yeah, so we made this film in landlocked Georgia with a minimal number of days. It was supposed to be Florida with 2 days of driving in Florida, and everything else was in Atlanta, which means and we'd had one weird day in Miami with that set on the top left, but. And we Georgia, there's no water anywhere, right? And there's no horizon anywhere in Atlanta, Georgia, if anyone's ever had to work there. So we decided, and we had one set that was supposed to be a very expensive penthouse overlooking the ocean in Miami. And so we had to build it because, of course, for 3 months, everyone was asking us why we couldn't find it in Georgia. So we went through that process, and then finally we built it, and it was crammed into a stage with 15 other sets and barely 16 feet. So we, but again, because of the relationship with the director and the DP and the relationship they had, the DP was all in on let's do this gigantic ocean outside the windows, floor to ceiling. Let's go for it with the floor to ceiling windows and reflective floors, and let's do this big ocean. And I think in that process, we very strategically kept setting up shots of, we said, okay, when we do the driving, we need big shots of water. Big shots of water in the car, big shots of water on the beach, just so in front and in back of it, there's water on a massive scale, so when you see this, you don't question it. Although, I did put that photo in there, and that's something else we can talk about. That first one, because when it was first hung, it was too high.
The horizon line.
And the horizon line was too high for 24 hours, maybe 36 hours of everyone panicking because it wasn't right. You could tell very much that it was a drop then, but we lowered it, and then it worked quite beautifully. But everybody was on board, and we had a plan for that. So I think, again, that I love that idea of the psychology of, once, and also like shooting in Georgia instead of Florida. Like once you see water, once you see that, then the rest of the next, in the first 2 minutes, you can tell everybody what the rest of the movie is, that psychology of that. So I think that's ended up working really well for us. In fact, the editor thought we were in location, so that was when he saw the footage, so that was good.
Well, and another one is like, for instance, being in a forest. So again, on Halo, sorry, it keeps saying Halo. We established a forest where there was this this very modern house on a rock. Mm-hmm. So when you, there is actually a slide of it. So when you actually go inside, we had a big photo backdrop, which I think you did, Sarah, didn't you?
Yes, we did, yeah. The halo.
Oh, you did this one as well, by the way, yeah.
So,
that's a Roscoe.
It's not all about Roscoe.
we had a whole load of we had a whole load of action outside. You're in the forest, so as soon as you go up and into the house, you completely believe that you're in the house.
From
it
Sophie?
was up there. And we also had to have the changes in season. So, you see, there was the concept, there's the forest, the house was done in post-production, and then we put up a summer backdrop, because we filmed part of it in the summer, and it had to be sort of brand new house. And then we had a sort of progression of 10 years, and so we actually managed, because we were filming for so long, to go back to the same forest in the winter, film it, and take photos of the backdrop. So we made it, the second slide will show you the sort of before and after. I don't know if it's going to pop up, but there is a sort of decayed house.
Yes, there it is.
There you go.
And we did a second drop for that as well.
Yeah. So we basically shot the new house and then distressed it over sort of, I think it was about 3 days. Or 4 days. It was a very fast turnaround. Turned the backing around, and then you've got a transition of time. But you completely believe it because you've seen the exterior.
Yes. You want to talk about 7,500?
Yes, why not? Why not? Yes. Yes. On another movie, I had another problem because it was a hijacking movie, and it was just it's just playing in a cockpit from an Airbus A. 220 20, I don't know. Yes, but it was, we shot everything on stage, not everything, just some little scenes we shot then on a real runway, but this was at the end. So yes, we had to, yes, and there was a pushback sequence because it was starting on the airport in Vienna, and we shot also. This is also again a projection with beamers again. I don't know, 12 or something, and shot again with this array of these cameras, and then we just projected into a 270 degrees round horizon for this sequence. Yes, and it works quite well, and yeah, that's it. Because you have a plane in the studio, but it should seem that it's flying. So you have to do really something. It was not. I think we used all the different ranges of projections, and we also did some things with green screen, blue screen, and also with gray screens. And yes, we tried to get it done that you believe that it's flying all the time.
Where did you get the footage from? Did you have control of the footage that was being projected?
This footage, the projection footage, we shot again real on the airport Vienna for the first things, and the rest was completely made with a VFX company. They make all the flying things are VFX, and then with blue, green, or grey screen, yeah, all the time.
And were you working with the VFX, looking at what they were going to put up there before, or was it?
Some things they showed me, but at the end, we had the thing is then your job stops, and they really start to preparing the things, and then it's done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes they say, okay, maybe you can have a look one time. But they don't pay you anymore. That's
the theme returns.
Yeah. Then you're
popping its head up.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, and this guy was that is sitting there in front of the airplane. He's just handling all the displays and all the stuff. What there? It was a simulator on this. On this computer, so that we also have all the movements and everything what the plane is doing is just also happening on the instruments. Yes.
So I'd like to go back a little bit to talking about context and the context of one image depending on what you see beside it or what comes after it, and I think understanding this kind of opens the door for low budget solutions, because we've been talking about a lot of quite large budget solutions, and there are possibilities if you don't have a lot of money. And Molly, you were talking about one of these before with the scenic painted drops that you had on Paint Hustlers.
Yeah, I think there's maybe when you're starting out a conception that backings are expensive or painted backings are expensive. I was having this conversation with someone, maybe Patrice or something, the other night. He was talking about an inexpensive backing. I think but one of the things that you can do to have something out the windows if your DP is on board is just, paint a little something. Establish it early on, establish what's out in that world early on, and then even like on the location, which that's a location up there, and on that location we shot a car driving up and the real thing, and then we moved to the set and we had this silly little painted backing, that was painted in a day or two, but it worked perfectly as something out the windows, better than on a really naturalistic film, better than blown out windows, better than gray and a tree, And we did that several times on this film, and because again, we had a 0 in our visual effects line. And it, you know, everyone was on board, and people would walk by and go, that looks so fake. And you're like, well, you're not going to be staring at it. It's out the window through layers of, you know, something. And yeah, it worked great. Easy to move around, you know. But it is, again, I think, a great solution, a great low-budget solution, a quick low-budget solution, and, you know, painting is a great option, really.
But you need to have everybody on board.
Everybody has to be on board, because, again, if someone looked at that,
Yeah.
they would be like, are you serious?
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
But everyone involved, you know, the cinematographer and the director are like, yeah, it's great, works perfectly. Because also, that director happens to have a vast amount of experience with painted backings. You know, all of our backings on Harry Potter were painted, and often very abstract. So, you know, a painted backing to him is easy. I have worked with directors and tried to push painted backings on them, particularly in the US, and they've often been rejected. The idea of which has often been rejected. But for some reason, maybe, I don't know why. In the UK and Europe, it's maybe a little bit more accepted.
Well, touching on scenic, you know, there's actually not that many scenic artists left as well, are there? You know.
No, there are not that many left, but the ones that are left are brilliant, and they can absolutely save you because they work so fast, and especially if you want a quick backing outside the window. And for instance, if you're doing a period film, it's so useful because you can just say, okay, here's the reference, this is the time of day, if you're just doing one particular time of day, and they will do something so impressionistic, but so brilliant because they understand what the camera sees. So to the naked eye, quite often, a backing looks, you know, you're like, gulp, is that really going to look convincing? And as soon as you put the camera on it, it just looks amazing. And those old scenic artists who, you know, also could do the glass paintings, Steve Mitchell, for instance, they absolutely can make a set. And, you know, when I started, we didn't really use photo backings or anything. It was always scenic painted backings, and we would cut holes in them and poke lights through them.
So what you're seeing here is actually not quite the right one. This is what Sophie was talking about before, which is no backing.
That was the embarrassment of no backing, because the DOP didn't want backings. But
Yes, yeah.
But scenic, there is a scenic painted backing which
Do you have the slide
I
of
was
that?
doing a low budget, relatively low budget commercial, and it had to be a girl on a lake, sort of fanciful lake, sort of. It was for a perfume, and I think that set went up in less than a week. You know, the scenic artist, that was actually Andrew Garnett Lawson,
Oh, I know.
just came and sprayed that sky and that background, and we created, as you can see, a little tank in the studio and those rocks, and immediately you get it through the camera. It was a lot cheaper than doing photo backing and finding the perfect sunset and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Well, the other
Couldn't
thing,
because of the reflections and
so the other thing is with which you saw briefly in the Roscoe film was the Blade Runner drop, which was produced from scenic art produced by Steve Mitchell, small. I think it was about 3 meters by 10 meters, laid on the ground and photographed, and then enlarged to the huge painted Las Vegas. I don't have a slide of it. I'm sorry. Drop, which was produced in monochrome, actually, and then lit by Roger Deakins for this sort of amber glow. But the reason for that was that they had in-camera visual effects, they had exploding glass, they had a gunfight going on, they had this spaceship coming in, and they had these 4-meter-high glass windows on a 4-meter-high rostrum. So there was no way that you could have green screen, because it just would have been a nightmare with reflections and all of those kinds. So the decision was taken to have a real background, because they had so much other stuff going on in the foreground, which was, you know, had to be edited in post. So it was another interesting use of, you know, a background for that reason.
That's so interesting. So
Yeah.
it was painted. What size was it?
Well, it was the artwork was painted, and then they produced photographs from that, which we enlarged to one of the biggest drops we've ever done. It was 20 meters high and 90 meters wide, twice, because Roger Deakins. So Steve did one version, which was Las Vegas at dusk. He did dusk first, and then he painted over it for dawn, because they wanted to have two different. In the end, you only ever see one of them, but we did produce two, which was
amazing.
Yes, yes. They hung them in front of each other, and then they dropped one. They shot all of the scenes in one, dropped it down, and the other one was there for the other scenes. So yes, it was interesting use of it.
I mean, one thing that people get nervous about these days is parallax, but we never used to worry about it, and now everybody's fussing. Oh, if you have a huge window, you can't go too close to it because of parallax, and it's dictating a lot. And I think the LED screen is really, the people who are, instigating the LED screen are really pushing that obviously if you've got LED, you can do parallax.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because at Roscoe, we always, when we build the images, we actually flatten them out to be parallel to the camera axis. And we did a couple of drops at Phil Greenstreet, did them for Thorsten, and we actually got 270 degrees of movement into that drop because of the way that Phil shot it from multiple angles, and then we built them all together, but it was a two-dimensional drop. That's the first thing, and I think the second thing is that parallax is, you can get an awful lot more out of it than people think.
Exactly.
You can go a lot further than people think that you can. And
do you think that's just DPs with less experience being afraid?
Yes, absolutely. It's my experience of that anyway. And there's also this thing called 2.5D rather than full 3D, because I don't know if you found this, it's going a bit off script actually, but it's quite an interesting question. Full three-dimensional, when you can go all the way around, you can see all the sides of it. It's distracting. I think it's distracting. It's a background. You're meant to be focused on personally, I think you're meant to be focused on the foreground. And yet, this brings us actually onto LED technology and LED volumes. And I wanted to ask, I think what we've all learned since The Mandalorian is that it's incredibly time and resource consuming. And I wanted to ask you, how do you see LED screen technology developing in the future? And what has to happen to make it more attainable to more productions?
Well, I think first off that people need to understand how it works, because I think the big problem at the moment is that producers are thinking, we can just put this into the volume and switch on a light and suddenly you're going to have the perfect desert landscape or you're going to have the perfect cityscape. And it doesn't work like that. You've got to get the footage, you've got to generate the imagery. So I was doing a big show in Melbourne where we were, again, world building, and we had to create this city that doesn't exist. And the producers didn't understand that you had to have what's called a virtual art department in order to create this environment, and that takes months and months. It's literally like having another art department. And the virtual art department needs to start almost before the art department. So I think first off, it's an understanding of the requirements to get the stuff up on the volume. And then it's people understanding how to use the volume best and its advantages and disadvantages, because it's not necessarily the solution for, I don't think it's the solution for anything particular, but, the one, I've used LED screens. I did an Autobahn, and we filmed the footage. It was one of those easy ones, and there's a little set in Babelsberg studio, and we put it on a sort of gimbal, and then we'd shot the footage, and you cannot tell the difference. It's amazing. It's a bit like front projection or something. But apart from that, I think there's a long way to go with the volume, really, unless you're Lucasfilms and like I don't know if Kevin's here, Kevin Jenkins, but yeah, I mean he's got a lot to say about it. So
I think you need content, don't you, Thorsten? I mean, you were thinking of using LED on inside, which you said was rejected in the end for.
Yes, we tried, but at this time it was too expensive for us. That's and we skip it. That's the thing, because it was quite huge. It's now, I don't know how many years it's ago. It's not so long time ago, but it was too expensive for us. So we switched to this front projection, and this is a bit cheaper, but it has some other issues than where you have to be aware of. And one time I would like to say about this parallax thing, because this were all, what we had were also flat filmed backings. And I put just in some meters in front of the big window, I put just some columns that you have something, that you have something for the parallax, that there is something moving when you're traveling with a camera in front of these huge screens. So I try to fake a bit of this parallax effect, because we also there's no 3D information in these big pictures. It's flat pictures as they are. And so you have sometimes you can think about solutions, what you maybe can afford to keep it a bit, to make it a bit better, that it's not everybody's missing it. It's the first 2 minutes.
yeah, it's always good to have some sort of foreground or miniatures. I've done it that you've had little miniature cars going in the background, and funny little aeroplanes sort of going on. You can get a thin wire. Yeah, I mean, all those old techniques still work, especially if you're doing a low budget thing. Just a few foreground little bits, satellite dishes and a couple of built rooftops before you get to the backing really help.
Well, the other thing is that you can't actually construct a set inside a volume, no? You cannot build inside a volume. You have to build, so you either have to build outside and truck it all in pieces, and put it together. And I'm wondering, what do you think about, instead of doing that where you build the set first and perhaps bring in hired LED screens afterwards for, like a backdrop would be?
Yes, I mean, it's a lot of time and experimentation to balance everything. Mm-hmm. It's not that you just switch on a light. The DOP has to spend a lot of time balancing the light. You have to make sure you've got all the levels and horizons right and the camera angles are correct, that it's going to look right through the camera. Mm-hmm. So you have to build everything on a rostra, get it all ready. But then for instance, if you're doing like in The Mandalorian, they do all these desert scapes. So you have your soil that you've put down, and then you've got this invisible join, so you've got to really fiddle about with the LED screens to get them to the right same color temperature. And then does that color temperature work with the skin of the actors who are going in? Mm-hmm. So it's a huge sort of balancing act.
So do you think it has a future? Personally?
I mean, I think it does. It'll just have to keep getting better. It'll have to get quieter. Cheaper. It'll have to get cheaper. It'll have to be less clean in a way, less intense or defined, I guess. Because the beauty of backdrops is often softer is better, right? So that all of those things, I think. But like all new technology, will keep pushing. I'm sure it'll keep pushing forward as films keep trying it to make it work,
I think one of the problems is technology is moving faster than people can afford. They build a volume, for instance, the one I was working on was the biggest volume in the world, and Nance Studios built it. But already the LED screens are much better than that volume.
Yeah.
But they can't afford to replace all the screens. So, it's interesting. Yeah.
So, moving towards Q&A, I've got one final question. 3 factors that can guarantee the success or failure of a background image. Thorsten. What
Three.
would be the 3 factors that could guarantee the success or failure of a background image? If you could say 3 things.
Successful failure or a successful
A
backdrop?
success or a failure.
Yes, it's always a conceptual thing when you start designing your set, or you're reading the script and then there is a set or something or a plane or what else. You have to think a lot about it, how it could work, and you have to talk to the people what it has to show. You know, this is. Yes, and if you have a good relationship with the camera guy and also with the VFX people, you have to talk a lot of things and a lot of times about this, that this works also in the circumstances that you have. Sometimes you don't have enough money for the LED, or you even don't have enough money for VFX on green screen. That it's maybe better a cheaper backing, and then okay, let's go for it. We put a bit more in front of the window, but that everybody gets satisfied with this, with what comes out after. That it has to fit to the whole thing. So.
Ooh, I think it's all to do with preparation and understanding. The technology, if you're choosing to use one of the technologies and stuff. Failures can be like the DOP doesn't understand how to light the backing, or you are very much at the mercy of the DOP in terms of a backing, I think. And then, I've had a couple of disasters where the photograph has been taken, for instance, when you're doing a photo backing, it's just been taken from slightly the wrong perspective. And like you said, suddenly the horizon line, there's something wrong and you can't work it out. And it's like the horizon line is too high, or, you're supposed to be on a certain floor of this apartment and you've established it, and suddenly you're right up in the air and you're just like, oh my God, how did that happen?
Yeah, because everyone's looked at it at half-inch scale.
Yeah.
But then, you've looked at it, we've all looked at it through a model at half-inch scale, or on a computer, right? And then it looks fine, or even inch, but then it's, 30 feet tall, 35 feet tall. You realize that 1 inch, it could have been out this much, and that's this much, So, oops.
Yeah.
So communication.
Communication was going to be what all of the 3 things, everything boils down to communication, really.
So
and
communication,
honesty.
communication, and communication is probably.
And the planning, how huge it has to be. You have to make a digital model or a haptical model, what you have on the table, or a SketchUp or whatever, to emulate how about the extreme ends of this backing, left, right, up, down. Do you see the floor? And this you have to, because if it's printed and it's laying in your studio and you hang it and then you see, oh fuck, it's too high, and then sometimes it works because you have enough space on the top or on the ground that you can lower it. then it's okay. Normally you always find a solution about when things happen, because it happens all the time. So I think the planning is really, 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 you have to think a lot about it, and yeah, that's...
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? At the top? You want to take one of these? Here.
Thank you. Sophie sort of set up the question perfectly for me. And this is both directed at the producers, or should I say the fabricators of the backdrop, whether it be Roscoe, and also designers, because we're the first ones to be summoned to the set when there's the problem, when they're putting it up and lighting it, and all of a sudden everything just doesn't work, even though it's been carefully planned. It all of a sudden doesn't work. And it doesn't work usually because there's been a loss of collective memory on the part of the camera and lighting department of how to light a vinyl drop, or a Roscoe soft drop, or a painted drop. There's 3 different ways, 3 different types of lighting. Is there any thought to creating sort of technical standards and practices as documents, digital documents that you can share with these novices? Because they're all novices now. They really haven't grown up lighting these things.
I do have an answer for that, Thomas, because we have them at Roscoe and we send them and they don't look at them. It's very simple.
I'll say one thing. You know, you get samples printed first. Everyone agrees. Like, you'll get a big piece of it coming your way in a DP. Everyone's going to look at it and see, you know, how bright it is, and they'll do a little camera test on it. Or you have a piece painted to do a camera test on. You know, there are definite ways to avoid that situation. You know, my situation with the ocean backing was, it was it was hung too high, and then it was a little bit off as well, so we just lowered the blinds a little bit. But but we had before then you're not going in blind. You know, you're not paying X dollars for a backing and hoping for the best, usually.
Yeah, but I mean, I've had a situation on a commercial, for instance, in Poland, where I was, you know, these are fast sets.
There you are hoping for the best, right? You're just,
yeah, so I just printed up these backings because there were loads of different sets, and the DOP came on and he had no idea how to light them, and he just basically flung a light at them, and all the vinyl from the backing just went bouncing back. He said, I can't use this. And so, you know, I said, well, we've got to get a shark's tooth gauze. And he was like, well, I've never heard of that. How do I light a shark's tooth gauze? You know, and so, I mean, always I would say have a shark's tooth gauze on hand for any DOP anyway, because photo backings can be too sharp. And what a shark's tooth gauze does is diffuse it. So I generally, with a photo backing, I'll always have a shark's tooth gauze there on hand.
in your back pocket.
In my back pocket. No, Sarah says you don't need them for Roscoe because you do soften them. This was a Polish company that I just sent some photographs to because I had to get something quickly. So I'm not saying for yours you necessarily need them. But if you do have a DOP who literally doesn't know how to light them, it can help you.
It will help. It will help if they don't know how to light it. Even yours.
Do you work with, who do you hire to take the photos? Does Roscoe suggest people to come out, or do you have to hire someone on location? And like, how do you trust? Yeah.
So I do the photography in Europe for the day-night, and Phil Greenstreet, who's sitting behind you, does it for America. But we also work with client-supplied photography. We do everything, you know, so it's really up to you. All clients can go to library to supply images, you know, or they can hire their own photographer. It's really a personal choice of what's best, what works for the budget, and the workflow. Because obviously if it's a Roscoe photographer doing a Roscoe drop, or indeed any other company, any of our competitors who use their own photographers, then the workflow internally is going to be faster than, you know, if they send us their own images, which we then build into some kind of layout for them.
You're probably going to answer this. Oh.
I'm close, but I don't know. I have a two-part question, if you don't mind. The first one, like the backdrop has been there since the 60s and before. And why is it still there when technology is going really crazy with everything? So I want to know why we're stuck with it, which is not a bad thing, but I want to know why it's unique until now. And the second part is the production designer is the one who should choose with the DOP and the director what we should see outside of the window. So why we are responsible of the backdrop, but we are not responsible of choosing the VFX when it's part of the image, and we have to choose it.
Well, you could talk about this. I mean, we do provide images for visual effects, but they're added in post. So the director could say, I want it to be something completely different outside. You know, I think particularly in the fantasy world, I'm going to give you that back.
Yeah, I mean, we have big discussions with the director and we present the world, but sometimes in post they might change their mind, or I've experienced the post-production house send stuff all over the world to get worked on. And so I will provide very detailed notes and models and references for every single texture. But they'll send half of it off to India and they won't give the notes. They'll just send something and say, oh, do this. So it will come back and they'll plonk it in. So it's very difficult to control because there's so many hands on the post process.
And technically, I think these backings are still there, but we have the technology, we can do everything now in post and everywhere. But I think to have a backing what's usable, then you can make the shots and they are ready. You don't have to touch them again with the VFX and with nothing, because it's just there and you shoot what you shoot. And this is the big advantage of a good backdrop.
I also think for the actors, it's very disconcerting for an actor to walk in and just have a huge blue window outside the window. And if they walk in and they see the world out there, it absolutely immerses them in it, as it does with all the crew, really, you know.
Hi, guys. I'm curious. This isn't about flat printed backings. I come from a theatrical background. And this is a question for you guys, but for the whole room. Does anybody use physical force perspective scenery anymore for out the window or backings?
Yes.
You guys do it? Because I've done it a couple of times, and it's a hybrid, but it's highly effective, especially when you're talking about issues of parallax, because you've got physical things. It falls apart at a certain point. And a combination, it was actually between backing, and we had to use physical elements in this case, where we weren't shooting out a window, we were on a porch, literally seeing the world, and had to use that. But I'm just curious, is that still current? I mean, some people, Phil, you're saying you still practice it. I don't know if anybody else does it.
Yeah, it's useful.
Good, because I feel like a dinosaur.
It's useful if everybody,
Well,
everyone has to be on board.
Yeah.
You have to have a director and DOP who are on board with that, and you have
Yeah.
to know where your camera's going, because it only works from one angle.
Do you find that difficult conversation? Because I won't say who, I was working with a production designer, art directing, coming from theater. I designed the whole force perspective bit. And when this designer showed up on set, they were livid because they said, this doesn't work. This is a disaster. I don't understand what I'm looking at. And then I had to get out my digital camera and say, I took a photo and then I took her and I said, here, look at that. Oh, that looks great. Yeah, oh, wow, okay, now I get it. I found there's a learning curve, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's another tool, isn't it? It's like one more tool in our toolbox. It's used less now, I think, but
Yeah, but my thing is, don't throw all the old techniques out of the window. Just because we've got this digital technology, it doesn't mean it's that good. You know, there's still some of the old techniques are amazing, and what you see through the camera.
Yeah, it's like having the knowledge of them is you can mix. Now you sort of can mix it up, like you said, little miniatures in the background.
I'm just going to add something. It's something we were going to talk about tomorrow on the Epic panel. And sort of one of the things we was discussing with the guys yesterday is using all the old techniques in conjunction with LED.
Yeah.
So using graded landscapes and looking, and it's one of the topics I've been talking about with some of the collaborators. We're developing some stuff at the moment, is looking at, like, 1920s cinema on the stage where you've got a painted backing, and how the landscape is manipulated and how the force perspective is manipulated, so you get a sense of drama and a sense of composition in the set, so you're not doing what we talked about, Sophie, the flat horizon going to infinity. You are designing the landscape as you would when you choose a location, you choose if you do a glass painting historically, you would choose a really interesting foreground to shoot on. You would find some landscape that had some drama and some texture and some depth, and then you'd add. But the kind of prevalence of kind of pushing it to a post-production solution where you're just like, well, we'll just make something ordinary in the foreground and we'll take it on. But the more you embrace those concepts, the more you're saying with the forced perspective, you're fooling the eye in multiple ways, so the audience aren't kind of, conscious of actually how it's done, which is kind of, I think that's important, is that kind of, and I'm a complete kind of, design history obsessive, but it's like looking at how it was done before we had LED, and it's like, it is, and Kevin coined a phrase, one of the things is full motion translight, that's what it is. And it's using it in that, using those techniques and the discipline you need to use as designers and as practitioners to make those choices and approach it with the same rigor you would have done in 1932 in Baselberg. You know what I mean? Like why is it different now? So.
Hi, I come from Denmark, and I've also been a part of the board for the Danish Design Guild. And we actually have been working on making our, it's about the whole VFX process that we have gone together and starting to get, every time we start a job, we got written into our contracts that we have 1 or 2 weeks salary for VFX production. And also that they are not allowed to let the movie out without our agreement. Yeah, and I think that would be a really good, if we all start working that way. But I think it's actually a thing we can change ourselves if we start working. The other thing is just that when they are in post-production, you are very deep into another project. And then sometimes it's a little difficult to share your time enough, but I think it's really, and it's also starting that the producers, they're not looking weird at you when you tell them that, of course, I also need to be in post-production. Yeah.
It's a fantastic panel. I love it. It's all about backdrops, it's like something called. Question, when you have a backdrop where you can take a photo, and it has to be, you will not take a photo because it's maybe surrealistic or maybe it's for sci-fi movie. What's your process of designing the backdrop? Do you do collages and then it goes to graphic designer and then it goes to a painter? Or how would you
When you say designing, do you mean for green screen or?
Oh, no, to later on to be printed.
Oh, printed.
Right, but it's you are not going to go and take a photo or get a photo from the stock. It needs other elements which don't exist. What would be the process?
It sort of depends.
Yeah, exactly. It really depends. Quite often, for instance, I had to do a Godzilla sort of backdrop, so it was like a miniature destroyed city. So I actually went to a scenic artist with all my references, got the scenic artist to paint it, and then we photographed it and manipulated it in post. So it's kind of like a collage. So yeah, I think collage is a good way of putting it, because you will use you'll draw, you'll stick photos on, so you'll get the impression and then get the scenic to paint it, and then this wasn't that. He painted it digitally, so, a lot of the scenics are now painting digitally. But the thing is, they still got, because it was Godzilla and it had to look old-fashioned, he's had the technique to make it look like the old black and white movie. Whereas I think if I'd got a concept artist to do it, he wouldn't understand the technique. So I wanted to go through that process to make that particular backing.
If you don't have access to a scenic painter, then you would use a concept artist and just muddle through. No, a good concept artist can help. You can get through that. And then KK, I was talking to KK. I don't think he's in here, but he just for something, a small backing. He just shot it on his phone recently. So, for something that he didn't have access. So it depends.
Hi, this was kind of inspired by you guys talking about how green screen affects the psychology of actors. And I remember reading a story about how Ian McKellen had a bit of a breakdown on set of Lord of the Rings because he was just so depressed by being only around green screen. And I can't remember if they wound up adding like a physical set for him or if they just did something to his trailer, but I guess I think it might have been the trailer, but have you ever had experiences where, you know, with all of the prep that you've talked about going into backings, both from the VFX perspective or otherwise, have you had the perspective where that's had to change completely last minute, like going to physical or changing to a different like method because of actors or something else?
I have a story about that. I used to be an art director before I worked for Roscoe, and I was working on Snowden, the film with Oliver Stone. And there's a very large set, which was the Tokyo penthouse apartment where he lived with his girlfriend for one part of the film, one of the acts. And I had just started kind of doing a little bit of work for Roscoe, but I was actually still being an art director. And I had just finished my part on this, and I got a panic phone call from the supervising art director, and he said, Oliver's been on the set, and he's asking where the drop is because they had green screen. Can you give us one for the end of next week? So we did. We dropped everything, and we did manage that, but that was absolutely, for Oliver Stone, his actors are everything. And it was extraordinary. Every morning, the entire crew had to clear the set, and I don't mean we had to physically leave the building where we were shooting and wait for an hour outside while he rehearsed with his actors, which meant in the rest of the day, we sometimes finished early because they all knew exactly what they were doing, because they had that hour on their own. And the surroundings were so important for Oliver Stone that the actors had that. And the producer just going, oh, we do it all in green screen. But no, they had to have a backdrop. So that was a good example of that. Yeah.
Ron Howard's like that too, and won't use green screen. So it's interesting. Yeah. Because of the actors. Yeah.
2 points that I'd like to share. One, when we were transitioning from film to digital, there was huge concern about the future of a painted backdrop, whether it would just be artificial and not look real in a digital world. And there were a lot of tests, and we did, and we proved that actually digital likes paint. Digital likes the soft surface. The other thing was that we, in some cases, photographed digital backdrops that existed from libraries and then turned those into digital enlargements, and they work too. So that's proven to be true. The closing point on this, though, is the argument for a backdrop is there's the two worlds, the in-camera world and the post world, in-post world. And the more that we lobby and work with the techniques of the past that are all in camera gives us provenance over the design. Once we pass that on to those others, we no longer have provenance of what our intention was. So it's good to argue and to know about the techniques and work for as much in camera as we can. We can't deny technology. It's our friend and it's our tool as well. But it can't be the only tool. It just is one tool of many in the box.
On that note, I think we can call it a day. Thank you very much, everybody.